If you walked into a medieval kitchen in 1342, somewhere in the rice-growing regions of Valencia, Spain, the first thing you'd notice isn't the lack of modern appliances or the absence of electricity. It's the incredible smell coming from a simple clay pot sitting over an open fire. Inside that pot, rice is cooking in a way that seems almost impossibly basic by today's standards. Just water, fire, and time. But here's what would shock you. That rice, prepared by people who never heard of nutrition science, who had no idea what a vitamin was, who couldn't even read the word protein, was delivering more actual nourishment to the human body than the fancy, enriched, fortified, specially processed rice sitting in your pantry right now. The medieval cook stirring that pot knew something about rice that the modern food industry has spent billions of dollars making sure you never discover. And what they knew kept entire civilizations strong, healthy, and free from the metabolic disasters that plague us today. A peasant eating rice in medieval Europe or Asia absorbed nutrients that your body is literally starving for right now, even if you ate rice with every single meal. This isn't romantic nostalgia for the past. This is documented nutritional fact. And the reason why reveals one of the most profitable deceptions in food history. And if you want to keep discovering knowledge that history buried, subscribe now to Medieval Histories and hit that notification bell so you never miss another revelation, because what you're about to learn will make you see every grain of rice completely differently. The difference between medieval rice and modern rice isn't just about taste or texture. It's about whether your body gets fed or gets poisoned, and understanding this difference might be the most important thing you learn about food this year. Right now, as you're reading this, millions of Americans are experiencing something strange after they eat rice. Maybe it's you. About 45 minutes after a rice-based meal, there's this crash, this sudden wave of fatigue that makes you want to lie down. Your energy doesn't just dip, it plummets. You feel foggy, unfocused, sometimes even a little shaky. If you're like most Americans, you felt this so many times that you think it's normal, that it's just what happens after you eat. But here's the truth that should terrify you. This isn't normal. This never happened to people who ate rice for thousands of years, and it's happening to you because of what they did to your rice before it ever reached your plate. Over 70% of Americans now experience blood sugar crashes after eating rice, a food that sustained the healthiest, longest-lived populations in human history without causing a single one of these problems. The rice that fed Chinese emperors, Japanese samurai, Indian scholars, and European merchants for centuries didn't cause diabetes, didn't cause obesity, didn't cause the foggy brain and constant hunger that modern people accept as inevitable. Your great-grandmother could eat rice every day of her life and maintain steady energy, clear thinking, and a healthy weight. You eat the same food, supposedly improved by modern science and technology, and your body rebels. What changed wasn't your genetics, it wasn't your metabolism, it wasn't some mysterious modern disease. What changed was the rice itself, and more specifically, what the food industry did to it in the name of profit and convenience. You've probably been told that white rice is bad and brown rice is good, that you should choose enriched rice or fortified rice or instant rice or parboiled rice. And every single one of these recommendations is designed to sell you a product while keeping you completely ignorant of what rice actually used to be. The medieval person eating rice wasn't choosing between a dozen processed varieties in a supermarket aisle. They were eating rice the way it grew, the way it was meant to be eaten, and their bodies knew exactly what to do with it. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment and tell me, what city, what state, or what country are you watching from right now? I love knowing where each person in this community comes from, this community of people searching for knowledge that was buried. Leave your location down below because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see rice for the rest of your life. And I want to know where in the world this knowledge is spreading. Whether you're watching from Texas or Taiwan, from California or Colombia, you're part of a growing movement of people who refuse to accept the industrial food system's lies, and that starts right here, right now, with understanding what happened to one of humanity's oldest and most important foods. We're in the year 1368 in a village in the Lombardy region of northern Italy, where rice cultivation has recently been introduced from the east and is beginning to transform the agricultural landscape. The sun is just reaching its peak in the sky around noon, and a woman named Caterina stands beside a stone grinding mill, her hands working rhythmically as she processes rice that was harvested just 3 weeks earlier from the flooded fields that surround her village. The rice grains are golden brown, still wearing their natural hull, and as she works them through the mill, she's not trying to make them white or polished or pretty. She's simply removing enough of the tough outer husk to make them edible while leaving everything else intact. The air smells like earth and grain, and if you reached out and touched the rice coming off her mill, you'd feel it. Slightly rough, not smooth, covered in a thin layer of what we would call the bran. Caterina doesn't know that this bran contains something called thiamine, or that the germ at the center of each grain holds vitamin E and essential fatty acids. She doesn't know the scientific names for any of the nutrients she's preserving. But she knows from generations of observation that rice prepared this way keeps her family strong through the winter, keeps her children alert and energetic, keeps her husband able to work the fields from sunrise to sunset without collapsing. In a large clay pot over her hearth, water is already boiling, seasoned with a pinch of sea salt harvested from the Mediterranean coast. She'll add this rice to that water and let it cook slowly, and in about 45 minutes, her family will sit down to a meal that delivers more bioavailable nutrition than anything you'll find in a modern grocery store. This isn't because medieval people had better rice plants or magical soil. It's because they hadn't yet discovered how to destroy rice in the name of making it last longer on a shelf. Katerina's rice will spoil if she doesn't use it within a few months, because the natural oils in the germ will go rancid, and this biological reality, this inconvenient truth about fresh food, is exactly what the modern food industry decided to eliminate, and in eliminating it, they eliminated your health. What Katerina was preserving without knowing it has a scientific name. It's called the rice bran layer in the germ, and together they contain something extraordinary. Inside that thin brownish coating on each grain of rice, there are compounds called gamma-oryzanol, ferulic acid, and a complete spectrum of B vitamins, especially thiamine, which your brain needs to convert food into energy. The germ contains vitamin E in a form called tocotrienol, which is 8 times more powerful as an antioxidant than the vitamin E you buy in supplements. Plus, it has essential fatty acids that your body cannot make on its own and must get from food. When you eat rice with all of these components intact, something remarkable happens in your digestive system. The fiber in the bran slows down how quickly the starch converts to sugar, the oils in the germ help you absorb fat-soluble vitamins, and the B vitamins ensure that your cells can actually use the energy from the starch instead of just spiking your blood sugar and crashing. This is why medieval people could eat rice as a staple food, sometimes twice a day, and never developed diabetes or obesity or metabolic syndrome. Their rice came with its own built-in regulation system. But here's where everything changed, and the date you need to remember is 1870. In that year, industrial milling technology advanced to the point where it became possible to remove the bran and germ from rice quickly and completely, creating what we now call white rice. The motivation wasn't health, it wasn't taste, it was pure economics. White rice, stripped of its oils, could be stored for years without going rancid, shipped across oceans, warehoused in hot climates, and sold at a massive profit margin. The rice industry had found a way to turn a fresh food into a shelf-stable commodity, and they didn't care that in the process they were removing 90% of the vitamin E, 80% of the B vitamins, and 75% of the minerals. They marketed this new white rice as pure and clean and refined, and the opposite of the rough brown rice that peasants ate. And within a generation, white rice became a status symbol. Rich people ate white rice because it was expensive and modern, and poor people aspired to eat white rice because that's what rich people ate. Meanwhile, in countries where rice was the primary food source and people switched from brown to white, a disease called beriberi exploded. Beriberi is thiamine deficiency, and its symptoms include fatigue, confusion, nerve damage, heart failure, and death. By the early 1900s, beriberi was killing hundreds of thousands of people per year in Asia, and doctors couldn't figure out why until a researcher in the Dutch East Indies finally proved that the disease was caused by eating white rice instead of brown. The food industry's response to this disaster wasn't to go back to selling whole rice. It was to invent enrichment, the process of stripping away nutrients and then adding back a tiny fraction of synthetic versions. And that's exactly what you're eating today. Researchers at the University of Arkansas in the United States conducted a study in 2016 where they compared the nutritional content of rice prepared the medieval way, which meant minimally processed with bran and germ intact, against modern enriched white rice. They measured not just the presence of nutrients, but their bioavailability, which means how much your body can actually absorb and use. The results were shocking. The medieval-style rice delivered 400% more thiamine, 300% more niacin, 500% more vitamin E, and over 600% more magnesium than the enriched white rice. But even more revealing was what happened when they fed both types of rice to test subjects and measured their blood sugar response. The people who ate the whole grain medieval-style rice showed a gradual rise in blood sugar that peaked at a healthy level and then declined slowly over 3 hours, giving them steady energy the entire time. The people who ate enriched white rice showed a sharp spike that went into pre-diabetic ranges within 30 minutes, followed by a crash that left them hungrier than before they ate. This is the blood sugar roller coaster that millions of Americans ride every single day. And it's not because there's something wrong with your body. It's because there's something wrong with your rice. The study concluded that the process of refining rice removes the very components that allow your body to process rice safely, and then enrichment adds back such a small fraction of those components in such a synthetic form that it's essentially nutritional theater. You're being sold a food that has been deliberately damaged and then barely patched up, and you're paying extra for the privilege. Another study from the University of Sydney in Australia in 2011 used the glycemic index to compare different types of rice, and they found that whole grain brown rice had a glycemic index of 55, which is considered low and healthy, while instant white rice had a glycemic index of 87, which is higher than pure table sugar. Let that sink in for a moment. Modern instant rice raises your blood sugar faster than eating spoonfuls of white sugar. This is what progress looks like in the food industry. They've turned one of the world's healthiest staple foods into a vehicle for metabolic disease, and they've convinced you to thank them for it. The year 1943 marks the moment when the betrayal became permanent and systematic. During World War II, the United States military needed rice that could be stored indefinitely in tropical climates without refrigeration and shipped to troops anywhere in the world. The solution was a process called parboiling, which involves soaking rice in hot water under pressure before milling it. This forces some of the nutrients from the bran into the starchy center of the grain, and then the bran is removed anyway. The military loved parboiled rice because it was shelf-stable, quick cooking, and nutritionally superior to plain white rice, though still vastly inferior to whole grain rice. After the war, food companies saw an opportunity. They could market parboiled rice to civilians as a premium product, something better than ordinary white rice, and charge more for it. Brands like Uncle Ben's built entire empires on selling parboiled rice as if it were a health food, complete with images of friendly uncle figures and promises of nutrition. But here's the cruel trick. Parboiled rice is still refined rice. It's still missing most of its fiber, most of its oils, most of its minerals, and most of its vitamins. But because it has slightly more nutrients than completely stripped white rice, they can call it enriched and make you feel good about buying it. The food industry took a wartime compromise, a product designed for soldiers who had no other options, and sold it to peacetime families as an upgrade. And Americans bought it, literally and figuratively, because we trusted that enriched meant healthy, that fortified meant complete, that modern meant better. Meanwhile, the traditional rice mills that produced whole grain rice began disappearing because they couldn't compete with industrial operations that could process 1,000 times more rice per day. By the 1960s, it was actually difficult to find real whole grain rice in most American supermarkets. And an entire generation grew up never tasting rice the way humans had eaten it for 10,000 years. The food industry had successfully replaced a complete food with a nutritionally bankrupt substitute, convinced everyone that the substitute was superior, and then started selling supplements to fix the deficiencies that the substitute created. They sell you white rice that causes inflammation, then they sell you anti-inflammatory pills. They sell you instant rice that crashes your blood sugar, then they sell you energy drinks. They sell you enriched rice that's missing magnesium, then they sell you magnesium supplements. It's the perfect business model. Create the problem, hide the cause, sell the solution, and make sure the solution never actually solves anything so customers keep coming back forever. The good news is that the knowledge wasn't lost. It was just buried under decades of marketing and corporate propaganda, and you can reclaim it right now, today, with a single decision. Real rice, the kind that medieval people ate, the kind that nourished the healthiest civilizations in history, still exists. You just have to know what to look for and where to find it. When you go to the grocery store, ignore everything in the rice aisle that says enriched, fortified, instant, or quick cooking. These are all code words for nutritionally destroyed. Look for rice that says whole grain, brown rice, or better yet, find rice that still has terms like unmilled or semi-milled on the package. The best option is to find a local or online source that sells rice directly from farmers who use traditional milling methods, which means they remove just enough hull to make the rice edible but leave the bran and germ intact. This rice will be more expensive per pound than white rice, but you'll eat less of it because it actually satisfies your hunger, and you'll save a fortune on the supplements and medications you won't need when your body's getting real nutrition. When you cook this rice, don't rush it. Medieval people understood that good food takes time, so let it simmer for 45 minutes to an hour. Let the grains fully hydrate and soften, and you'll taste a complexity and richness that instant rice can never deliver. Want to know if you've been fooled by the enrichment scam? Try this test right now. Go to your pantry, pick up your rice package, and read the ingredients. If you see anything other than rice on that list, if you see thiamine mononitrate or ferric orthophosphate or niacin or folic acid, you're holding rice that was stripped and then artificially supplemented with synthetic vitamins that your body barely recognizes. Real rice has one ingredient, rice, and that's all it needs because nature already put everything in there. This knowledge wasn't lost, it was just buried, and every time you choose whole grain rice over enriched white rice, you're rescuing wisdom that kept generations healthy when life was much harder than it is now. If this video opened your eyes to what the food industry hides, hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel keep bringing these truths that few have the courage to tell. And If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now to Medieval Histories and hit that notification bell, because every week we unearth more knowledge that they'd rather you never discovered. See you in the next video.